Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zach with an H podcast. We are joined today by author Michael Kardos, whose work I first found just perusing at the library. Came across the 3-Day Affair, which we got right here, which we'll be talking about. A fantastic book. 3 kids from Princeton, their usual reunion weekend, and pretty much, which is why you have a great story. But we are here with Michael Kardos. He has published a number of novels, poetry, has an album that released in the mid-90s, The 13th Floor. Excited, Michael, to talk about your whole journey to where you are today, and I appreciate you joining the episode today.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I'm glad to be here.
So, of course, Michael, anytime we bring someone on, we always start at the beginning. And so before we talk about author Michael Kardos, I'd love to hear about Mike the drummer. So I was reading right before we got on an interview you did with David Adams a few months back, end of 25, and you said, quote, there were already too many people playing the saxophone in the 4th grade, so I just gravitated toward the drums. Is that true?
Yeah, it's always amazing, these little things that determine huge swaths of one's life. And so that's exactly what happened. In 4th grade, Mr. Murata was signing up people who wanted to play instruments, and I wanted to play the saxophone. And so I said, I want to play the saxophone. And his answer was, no, a lot of kids have already signed up for sax. You should sign up for drums because not a lot of people have signed up for drums. And I said, all right, and that was it. And that obviously was a huge decision that seemed like a nothing decision at the time.
And certainly was a lot more than that as we move ahead to your next slightly older phase. So you graduated from Princeton, which is where 3-Day Affair has our 3 main characters, Will, Jeffrey, and Nolan, as well as Evan, the 4th guy, kind of from.
Mm-hmm.
So what drew you, Michael, to Princeton initially? And did you feel right at home, or was it an adjustment period when you first started?
Yeah. Okay. So, I applied there. I grew up in New Jersey, so it's not like I didn't know the place at all. And I think the true answer is I applied there because I liked the campus. I knew it was a good school, and because back then you could, if you applied early and you got in, there was a window where you wouldn't have to apply to any other schools. And so I applied early, figuring if I happened, the off chance I got in, it would save me a lot of work applying to other schools. And so and I got in early. So that was how it worked. So, um, you know, I, I didn't feel like, oh, this is a particular school I absolutely wanted to go to, but I knew it was good. And also, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to study. And I knew that if I went there, there was lots and lots to choose from. And I went in, this was common then. You went in as an undeclared major, unless you were an engineer. And in the engineering school, you went in as a liberal arts major, and you had until the end of your 2nd year to choose a major. And so I ended up just, I think which was good advice was I just took classes that were supposed to be good. So, classes that other students have said, oh, you got to take this professor, you got to take this class, you got to take that professor. And so that's what I did. So I bopped around a lot, and I took a lot of different classes, and I ended up temporarily majoring in political science, which I loved. I mean, the professors are great. I thought it was really interesting. At Princeton, you have to write a senior thesis. And what ended up happening was, as we got along, I was like, and I was also taking music classes all along. It's not like I wasn't taking them. Princeton has a lot of students taking music classes, but very few majors. And it got to the point where I was like, something, I have to write a senior thesis. I'm either going to have to write a long 100-page political science paper or a big musical composition for orchestra or band or wind ensemble. I was like, that kind of seems a lot more fun. So I ended up switching majors and graduating as a music major. And there's not or at least there wasn't a performance major. It was music theory and composition, and you played a lot. I mean, I played in the orchestra and I played in the jazz band and all that kind of stuff. But that wasn't for credit, so it wasn't a performance degree. So yeah, so that's how I ended up majoring in music, and I had my band in college. We were a cover band, and we played around and stuff in college. And then the singer and I kind of decided to keep it going a while after college and see what we could do with it. So it was, I think, one thread that goes through my life is that I'm a really bad planner, and I don't know if I'm a bad planner or just a disinterested planner. or an uninterested planner, but the sort of I feel like the little decisions I spend a lot of time thinking over. Like you could take me to a restaurant with 10 things on the menu and I will just sit there freaking out, not knowing what to do.
Yep.
But I feel like the big decisions, like, like where to move to, or like to propose to somebody who I'm gonna marry, like those things don't take as much thought. Those are, so it's not like a lot of planning, but yeah, that's just kind of how it worked out. And then so I played music through my 20s,
Hmm.
um, which was amazing and really hard. And one thing I started to look at were the musicians who were older than me, who it got even harder. And what I found was it's one thing to not get anywhere. It's another thing to get really far, but to get somewhere can be really tough because you don't know what to do or how much to keep it going or not keep it going. And then what happened was I started, I was always reading like you, like when I was younger, I was always reading, and I was always interested in writing. And it wasn't until, I started writing on my own, and I was like, oh my gosh, when you're writing on your own, unlike playing the drums in a band, you don't need a sound man, you don't need gear, you don't need like all the what's the word, accoutrements of playing in a band, all the stuff and the things to keep track of. You could, when you're writing, you just need a notebook or your computer, and it was so nice to do it that way that I kind of got more and more into that.
Yeah, certainly we've had a great breadth of work from you now that has hit shelves a lot as well in these last 12 to 14 months
Yeah,
as well. Fun City Heights, which I still have to get to, but Quick Change as well. Actually, no, it's those two. It's those two, but still,
yeah,
I do want to go back to your
yeah,
music career. With 13th Floor.
yeah.
So, do you wish things went differently with 13th Floor? Do you think you kind of
I
had hit the area you wanted to hit?
I think, well, let's put it this way. By the time I went back to grad school when I was like 29 or whatever, I might have just turned 30. I was really like ready to make a big change, So, which is not exactly a way of answering the question. It's just a really hard existence. And the one thing I didn't want to do, which I had seen other happen with other people, is I really, really, really didn't want it to get to the point where I didn't like it. I didn't want to not like playing. I didn't want to not like being in a band. What I mean? Like I still wanted to love it. And I've seen that happen with writing too. And I feel like it's a little like if you like pizza and someone's like, oh, I'm glad you like pizza. Here is pizza for every meal for the next 10 years. And then you hate pizza, right? And so, I was always kind of concerned about that and trying to be careful about that. So, the band was best when we were just playing well. And, it was like hours and hours you drive to a show and you'd unload and the sound man would make a point of not holding the door for you. And then you would load up all your stuff on stage and it was a many, many, many hours. And then you play your set and playing the set was great. Playing was great. If the sound was decent on stage, it was always really fantastic. And then the second you're done, they want you off stage and you got to pack up and everyone's left and you're still packing gear. And so like the before and the after and the between there was a lot of stuff that was not so much fun, but the playing was always great. And the singer, Josh, is still, he was the best man at my wedding. We're still really good friends. He lives in Canada now, so it's not like we can get together and jam, but when we do see each other, we will get together and jam.
Does he still play more? Does he play a lot of music still?
He plays some. He plays some. I think I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, our long-term guitarist passed away a couple of years ago, and he was the one who was really playing the most still, all the, with a bunch of different groups.
I'm sorry to hear that, but a lot of music though. Certainly,
Mhm.
so the three of you guys.
Well, there are four. There's a bassist. And I think he still plays a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we go from playing the drums,
Hmm.
and now your wife Catherine, who you mentioned, is also doing an interview right now, as we do ours. You guys, right? You met at Ohio State. First off, is that correct? And your MFA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for 15 years, you are co-directing a program in Mississippi. So
Yeah.
how does it transition? Like
Okay. So what? Like,
happen?
how did that? Yeah. So how did that happen? So I did
Yeah.
not plan on getting. So I got my Master's of Fine Arts at Ohio State, and the plan was, again, not much of a plan. It was to get out of New Jersey for a few years, and really have a chance to obsess on this thing that I really love doing. Like I really love writing, but I didn't know any other writers. Certainly didn't have any other writing teachers. I just really liked doing it, and I had read a lot. I would go to the library and pick out the how-to books and the
Mhm.
craft books and I was like, well, this is great, but I need to really dive into it. And so I figured I would go there. It was a 3-year program, and I would, I don't know, obsess for a few years on it, and then come back to Jersey and get a job. I hadn't really thought about it too much. What I noticed was, first of all, very quickly, I was like, oh, these are like my people in a way that even more than musicians are my people. You know what I mean? Like musicians are my people on stage, but I feel like the writers I met were a little more my people in a sort of, I don't know, in some more basic way. So I like being around them. And then I realized that my professors have a really good gig because they were in a environment where they were what they were doing and what they were passionate about doing was given some kind of you know an institution being like, yeah, this is worth doing. And so I liked teaching. As a graduate student, I was a teaching assistant, so I taught some classes, and I found I really liked it. Um, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is kind of a good gig. But the problem is, I was a music major as an undergrad. I'm certain no one's going to hire me to teach college, after doing this for 3 years. I felt unbaked, or I wasn't fully baked. So it just so happens this was in like 2003 that there were some PhD English programs that focused in creative writing, and this was a relatively new thing, but there were some that were around. And essentially, what that meant was you'd get a PhD in English, but your dissertation would be a creative work, as opposed to like a monograph, or a more traditional book. So my then girlfriend, subsequent wife, we applied to a bunch of schools. She's a poet, and we tried to find places that would work for poetry and work for fiction. And we ended up going to Missouri for 4 years, and that did a lot of good things. First of all, it was fun. Second of all, we got married there, and it was great. It was another 4 years to obsess in this thing, and have more time. You have 4 years to start publishing your work, to obviously learn more, get more teaching experience. So that's what we did. And then we the two of us went on the job market to find things. And the only way, if you're not in like university faculty life, it's a very, very weird uh, world, and a very specific world. And the only way we could describe it to our families that made any sense is that it's like the NFL draft, but for no money. Because there's very few jobs, and you go where they send you. And so we ended up interviewing all over the country, and it just so happened that Mississippi State was able to come through with 2 tenure track positions, and so that's where we ended up. And the first day of my life I was in Mississippi was for my job interview, and the first day that Katie was in Mississippi was a week later for her job interview. And so we went down there. We didn't have kids. It's pretty easy to be adventurous, and we didn't know how long we'd be there. And it ended up being 15 years. Our kids were born there and stuff, and so it really became home for quite a while, really until COVID, which, like for many people, kind of shook things up a bit. But yeah, so that's how we ended up there, and it was great. So
Okay. Full
yeah.
story, full stop. So now we move on. Showed it in the beginning. So we got the 3-day affair,
Mhm.
which I will admit that I think I've only now reread maybe 5 or 6 books. I've never been a big rereader. Like I look at my reading history as a reader from until I was about 14 and went to high school, maybe from like 5 to 14, I would say. And it's funny, I didn't read Harry Potter until I was 21, because I didn't read it when I was a kid. I couldn't get past any of it. And then I read the whole series in the span of about 5 weeks. It was a great time right after college ended. But so I did 3-day affair. When I started out, just kind of going to the library, I'm trying to find books, truthfully. And I am a guy, like I like covers. I like the cover sleeve like this. I think a good colored cover sleeve could give you a better chance in a sea of 1,000 books sometimes if you're not going off a recommendation. And I picked it up, and I remembered it vividly for a while. I did read your second book about with Ramsey Miller? What was that
Oh
one?
yeah, that was before he finds her.
Before he finds her, I did not get a chance. It did not come in time for our conversation, so I have not reread it, which is why there were no pre-baked questions. That doesn't mean there won't be any in the next 20 minutes. But I really liked 3-Day Affair. Honestly, I remembered maybe 55% accurately from our first time. I knew that when Jeffrey comes out of the red.
What's it, the save? I haven't read it in a long time. Is it the Save-A-Lot? It's a convenience. It's a 7-Eleven.
It's like a 7-Eleven with a fake name in the fake. Was it a fake New Jersey town that Will lives in?
Yeah, I think I'm always making up Jersey towns.
Yeah, because you can make your own. You make your own rules, right?
Yeah, I feel like I either got to set a fake town wedged in between real towns to give it so it makes sense, or yeah.
When Carter Wilson was on last summer, we had the same conversation because he wrote a book about Barry, New Hampshire, which I think he made up, but was also a real place. Anyway, so 3-Day Affair, great book if you haven't read it. Guys from Princeton, I got a Princeton alum here, so I want to ask a two-parter, but I'm going to start with one. I will just add, if you haven't read it, it's 247 pages, very digestible read, very enjoyable, good chapter length, good pacing. And the narrator certainly tells a good story. So, what was the reception? This was your first novel, correct? We have that.
Mm-hmm. It was.
What was the initial reception of 3-Day Affair?
Yeah, so it was funny because I did not write that novel to be a crime novel. I just thought I liked the idea, and I just wrote it to be a novel. And it so happened that the publisher that bought it, the Mysterious Press, part of Grove Atlantic, and they're a crime imprint. And so my editor for that book was hilarious because Otto Penzler, we spoke on the phone, and he said, just so you know, you're a crime writer now for this book. So his editorial comment was, go through it once and just kind of keep that in mind as you pass through it. And so, which is to say that in my brain, my books they're all the novels anyway have some kind of crime in them, but I don't think of them as, they're a little weird. They're not exactly thrillers. They're not exactly mysteries. They're just what they are. But so the reception, people liked it. I think people liked the end quite a bit because there's there's a few different things that happened in those last 3 chapters that people were a little surprised by. The funniest reception was anyone who knew me would read the first chapter or 2 and be like, oh, he reminds me of you. And then I'd be like, oh, no. Because he's not the greatest guy by the end. And so that always made me laugh. But no, it got a good reception. And I was really happy about that. And then, which among other things, because it let me write some more of them. But yeah.
I did just want to add, you mentioned Otto Penzler, and that name rang a bell for me. I wasn't at the bookstore in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I was at the sister or brother bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona about 3 months ago. And I remember hearing Otto Penzler, and I just did a quick search, and that's just a very funny small connection for where we start, because I was at the
Mysterious
in Scottsdale.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Great bookstore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was really interesting, too, was the book coming out as a crime novel kind of introduced me to a world that I hadn't been part of at all. And so that was fun and continues to be fun, is that I've just met a lot of crime writers that I never would have met, and I got introduced to books that I wouldn't otherwise have read. It's not that I haven't read crime, but it's not my primary. I just kind of read what I read. But so it's sort of foisted upon me an education in crime fiction that I'm really glad to have been getting.
Yeah, because it's kind of in its own category when you're reading a crime thriller versus kind of just you don't know what genre you're getting. So if you're just kind of getting broad fiction, it's a whole nother thing. And in a lot of those cases, right, you're just having books with 127 chapters, 400 pages. Like every 2 pages is a different perspective. You're painting the whole picture, and it's just like there's a lot going on here, and it's the page turner, right, from start to finish.
Yeah, and I think the 3-Day Affair specifically, I was influenced by a bunch of different books, but one of them, I don't even know if you've heard of this, because it was a big deal when it came out. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
it must have been in the 90s, called A Simple Plan. They made a really good movie out of it with Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton. And anyway, the premise is so simple. It's these two brothers find a bag of lots and lots of money in a downed small airplane in the woods and decide not to keep it, but to keep it for a year, and if nobody claims it, then to keep it, you know. And it's a very simple premise, and it's just one of these things where people who consider themselves good guys start making these incrementally worse decisions that lead them down deeper holes that make them make worse decisions.
Mhm.
And I think I was interested, at least for this novel, with these characters who they tell themselves they're good guys, you know, right up to the end, they tell themselves they're good guys. I guess that to me, like I've always been interested in that. I'm still interested in that. People do terrible things. You ask them, they believe in the bottom of their heart that they're good people.
Have you read any Peter Swanson work?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Mhm.
first thing I think of when you
Yeah.
go there, because every one of his characters has some kind of flaw in their
Yeah.
head that justifies their actions and making them
Yeah.
good people, even though every main character suffers from the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so, would love to talk, Michael, about your writing process. We talk about some of your influences. What is your process like? And I know it's different for everybody. Some people, you're writing 1,000 words a day.
Hmm.
For a book, everyone's different. But I'd love to know your process, how long it takes for the idea to go from your brain to the
Hmm.
paper to actually creating a story out of it.
Yeah. And I will preface this by saying it's always amazing to me how different every writer's process is. And I'm also always hungry to know what other writers' processes are, because I think it'll somehow shorten my own process, and it never does. My own process and it's a little different for short stories versus longer things. For short stories, when they happen, I get an idea I like, I jot it down, and at some point I sit down and I don't worry about anything and I just start writing. And I don't care if it works or doesn't work because it's a short story, and I'm not going to lose that much time if it blows up in my face, or even if it doesn't come to anything and it sits in my hard drive for a dozen years. Maybe I'll something will come of it. That like it feels like for me, short stories are very low stakes in that way.
Mhm.
I feel like for novels, because I know that at best it's going to still be a long it takes a long time. There's a lot of pages there, and the level of complexity is really high. So I try to do a little more planning ahead of time, which is to say, I've always got ideas on my computer, premises and ideas and stuff. And I think something's got to be really compelling for me to want to push it forward, because I think one of the hardest things and most important things is to keep yourself really interested in it for the year or two or three that it takes to do it. So a lot of my process is just figuring out what is going to make me the most excited about writing it over the long haul, and what's going to make me sort of trick myself into thinking I'm getting away with something.
Okay.
Like if I so I can't overplan it, because then it's ruined and nothing interesting happens and I won't surprise myself. I can't underplan it because I don't want to build something with no scaffold. So I guess the process is, once it sits in my head for a really long time and I can't get it out of my head and I decide I want to do it, which often, at least I have four novels, all four of them, at least in some way, are based on something that I thought of 10 years earlier. Like they're really sitting there for a while. And then
Mhm.
if I actively work on it, maybe I'll spec out, I don't even want to call it an outline. It might just be, here's a beginning, here's maybe where it ends up, kind of, sort of. Here's some big things that might happen along the way, two or three or four big pivot points. And that's about it. And then if it still sounds interesting, and if I could kind of tell you the story of it in a minute or two, and you're like, oh, that's a good story, then maybe there's something there. And then maybe I'll try to spec out a little bit more detail and then start trying to write a chapter and see if, once I start writing, the voice is everything for me. So like, if the voice isn't really working, then there's nothing working. So a lot of it is slow going at the beginning, trying to get what the voice of the book is going to be, and what kind of book is it going to be. Is it going to have a noir tinge to it? Is it going to be humorous? Fun City Heist, the one that came out most recently, is very consciously a comic heist novel, and it's intentionally supposed to be funny, whereas like the one before it, Bluff, is not a comic novel. There's humorous moments in it, but it's definitely not a comic novel. So just getting the voice and the tone and everything. And if I can get that, then I'll start forging ahead and hope that it can keep going. I hope the momentum keeps going. And I have a lot of stuff in my hard drive where it abandons on page 50 or on page 40 or on page 100. And it sometimes
Mhm.
it just isn't happening. And it isn't happening, And that's one of the crazy things is that like every time I start to do it, it feels like I've never done it before. And I know to some degree, I know I can write a scene. I know I can, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things on a level of craft that I've spent a lot of time working on and learning, but craft without a really good story is just like a bunch of duct tape.
Of course. It's held together, but you don't know for how long it's going to hold.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned Fun City Heist. I want to talk about that and a little bit of quick change. Thank you, by
Yeah.
the way, for this copy.
Oh, of course.
So with Fun City Heist and quick change, you hadn't published in a little bit,
Yeah.
so it was great to see back. Great to see your words back out there. And I also just want to say that the guy that was doing the fake Indian accent as the tech guy is probably one of the best most enjoyable short stories I've read. Honestly, I was reading his character in an accent sometimes, honestly, out loud just to see what it would sound like talking to the woman about her, I guess, fake thesis. I don't want to
Mhm.
spoil it for anybody,
No, it's
but
okay.
it
No,
was fun. It was fun. That and the YouTube guy. I was curious when his prank would come into play
mhm.
because I know there was a really good build up in that one. Wish that one was a little bit longer. But my question is, with Fun City Heist, which came out in wait, so Quick Change came out in 26. Fun City Heist came out in 25. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So before that, you mentioned Bluff, another one I have to get to. Came out in 2018, so there was about a
Hmm.
7-year gap
Hmm.
between projects, or at least published works. I know you were working the whole time, and it can
Yeah.
happen. How good did it feel, Michael, to get your words back out there into the world again?
It felt great. I will tell you, there was one novel in between there that just wasn't quite working. And I spent, a few years on it. And it was okay. It worked. It has a beginning, middle, end, but it wasn't quite working the way it needed to. And so I could go back to it at some point, but I couldn't figure it out. And so right now it lives in my hard drive and you know, what do you do? But the reason the two books came out in quick succession was because they're two different publishers. Because one's a story collection, one's the novel, and it just so happened that their publication dates almost overlapped. They're within, I think, 4 or 5 months of each other. But it felt very good to have it out there for two different reasons. They're both novel. Well, they're both. So the novel Fun City Heist was a book that I really felt strong about for reasons that I thought it was. I think it's a good book, but also it's a book that I've been wanting to tell for a really long time because it's the first book I wrote that really centers a band. It's all about a band, and it's not autobiographical, but boy, like if you're a reader, I'm hoping you like it. If you're a musician and a reader, I really think it's for you. And that's been really gratifying to see, like people who play guitar, people who play any instrument, people who played it at a good level, a high level, people who just jammed in the garage, have really liked reading that. And I like the premise because I'm like, the idea is this band that has disbanded terribly 12 years earlier gets back together for one last show in order to rob the venue on their busiest night of the year. And what made me think about that, besides really wanting to write a book about a band and the strange bonds that long-term bandmates have, is what better alibi than if you rob the place while you're on stage doing your set. I mean, it just seemed impossible. So it had a really fun baked-in challenge. So it's very much a heist novel. It's very much like, if you like The Sting, the movie, and if you like Ocean's 11 kind of thing, and if you like
Mhm.
Almost Famous, so it's like, like all these weird things put together. And it was really, really nice to get that out into the world. And then the story collection, I've only had two collections. One was my first book back in, I think, 2011.
Mhm.
And so these are sort of like the ones that I like the most that sort of seem to fit together. Thank you. Since then, so a lot of these stories, some of them are relatively new, but some go back quite a ways. So that's really nice too, because I think all the stories have been published at one point or another in a magazine or a journal, but that's very temporary. It comes out in a journal, and then the next issue comes out, and there's a whole new set of stories. And so, it just personally, it was nice to have them all in one spot. So yeah.
So last thing I want to ask you, last formal question before we get to the
Yeah.
fun rapid fire section. So, Michael, what advice do you have for the aspiring authors out there?
I knew that you were going to ask me this question, and I thought about it, and it is the hardest question to answer. And I'm probably going to answer it in the most messy way possible.
Okay.
It's like holding several things in one's head at the same time. One of them is just read, because there are no good writers who aren't good readers. I would say read widely, because you never know what kind of book is going to influence you or something. Um, but these are kind of obvious answers. I feel like also advice is, I think it's important to know, on the one hand, it's really important to learn the craft, to learn how, the tools of the trade and all that. I think it's also important to know that nobody knows anything. Like, nobody knows anything. Like, eh, publishers don't know what's going to sell. Nobody knows what's people are going to enjoy. You never know. Like, no, it's such a weird thing, because at the bottom line is it's an art, and you could fumble your way into a wonderful thing you've written. You could work like crazy and come up with nothing. I think there's no correlation for me between what I spend the most time on and what's the hardest to work on and the result. Like, I don't know. So it's just really hard sometimes to give advice other than do what you know is important, which is read a lot, write a lot, and read a lot with an eye towards stealing what you can in terms of craft, right? Like learn technique, learn to recognize technique in what you read, and then try to emulate that technique. I spent a whole ridiculously long amount of time on this super esoteric thing of like writing a story in past tense, but then slipping into present tense at key moments without the reader ever knowing it. Which, it's kind of a mistake to go from one tense to another in the middle of the thing, technically, but it can be done. And if it's done so the reader never notices it, there's boom, there's reasons to do it. So like, once, what happened was, last weekend I walked into a bar, and the bartender goes, he goes, "Hey, what do you want to drink?" And I just did it. I just slipped into present tense, right? The bartender goes, I didn't say, the bartender said. And because there's sort of casualness of banter that feels more natural in past tense, in present tense, even in a past tense, there's so many little bits of technique that you can come across if you keep an eye out for it. So I don't know if that's any advice. Meet other people who are doing it too, because I mean, I read a lot on my own, and I read craft books on my own, and I practiced, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, but it really wasn't until I met other writers, and we could just BS and shoot the breeze over things and make reading recommendations and really just be together. That probably helped more than anything. It matters who you train with, right? There's a reason why my kid was really obsessed with American Ninja Warrior for a long time. And we'd always notice that it would always come down to the final 4 or 5 people. They were each other's roommates. There were people who trained they're all the people who trained together. So I think there's something really valuable in finding people that you think are really good in something, and just learning from them.
Yeah, and you could apply that to any industry, right? If
Absolutely.
someone wants to be a baseball player, find people you like that play, you can enjoy socially, so then you can talk about the game, shoot the breeze about the game.
Yes. And this is not news, but often it was the beer after the workshop where you learn just as much, if not more, than in the workshop. Right? So.
No, exactly, right? You want to write, you talk to other writers. If you want to be a professional snooker player, go to the bar and watch the guys play. Darts players, the same thing.
Yeah.
Soccer player, broadcaster, journalist, piano
Anything.
player.
Yeah. And then what happens too is then what happens is, when I'm sure like broadcast, the whole idea of like, I'm a really, really terrible networker, and I hate everything about it, except when you don't think of it as networking. Like, if somebody really likes, if I really love somebody's work, of course I'm going to try to get their work into someone's hands, and of course I'm going to recommend things because you want it to succeed because you think it's wonderful. So, like I think just being around a good version of what you're trying to do and meeting the people who do it is always really valuable.
Agree.
Yeah.
So we move to the rapid fire round. We're gonna ask a couple quick questions for you here,
Sure.
and then we'll give you the opportunity to tell people where to find everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So, favorite gig that you played while you were with 13th Floor?
I think, oh man, my favorite gig. This is a terrible first answer. I don't know, other than I know it would have been one where the setup was easy, the sound on stage was good, and the sound man didn't the second it ended, the lights didn't flash on really quick, and the sound man didn't go, get off the stage. Like just something where it was chill would have been a favorite gig. I will say that we played a gig during the OJ Slow Speed Chase. That was not my favorite gig.
Oh boy. Yeah, that was what Bronco was.
Yeah, we're playing on stage and the TVs were on showing the slow speed chase, and everybody starts watching, and then we start watching. That was not the best gig.
Favorite Princeton sporting event you attended, if you went to any?
Yeah, no, I did. I went to a lot of basketball games. Favorite, I have to put in quotes, but I was at the game where Princeton lost by 1 point in the first round of the NCAA tournament to Georgetown, where Alonzo Mourning blocked 2 shots in like the last 3 seconds of the game, and we were ahead by 5 at the half, and it really seemed possible, even though USA Today put the chances of us winning as something like 1 in a billion. But it was a fantastic game with a tragic ending. But no, that was just a fun game to go to. That's probably one that stands out.
Fun facts about Michael Kardos that not many people know.
Pretty good at ping pong. I'm gonna lose to the person who's really good. Like someone who's legit really good, I'm gonna lose, but I'm like right under that.
Did you start out playing in the basement in New Jersey?
Of course, with a low ceiling. So the question is whether the ceiling counts as in or not in.
It never did for me.
Yeah, I think it became a do-over or something. Yeah.
Okay. It's funny you say ping pong, and we're doing this on the reason when we were going through days, the reason we didn't record last night. I'm actually in a weekly ping pong group I go to every Monday night.
Oh my gosh. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's good social experience, a little ping pong, a little talk, wait 30 minutes.
No, that's really good. I get a little extra mileage out of the fact that I'm a lefty, so it freaks people out a little bit. And the other thing I do is I just always played this way. I'm going to use my phone, pretend this is the paddle. I only use one side of the paddle, so I hold it like a regular thing, but my backhand is like I do this, instead of this, I kind of do this. So it puts a weird top spin on all my backhand shots.
Yeah. How does your wrist can handle all that?
Yeah. Drummer wrist. I don't know, but
that's right, drummer. Yeah, see, I don't have that. I shoot a basketball with one hand as well, so it's kind of very weird that I hit a same number of hands I'm using in ping pong, I'm using in basketball.
Yeah.
That was a very unexpected, positively unexpected answer. I like that one. And then we'll finish up with one more here.
Yeah.
Always ask at least one food question. The initial question was always favorite food to cook and favorite takeout food, but I'm starting a new category today.
All right.
Start, bench, cut, burrito, quesadilla, or bowl.
Or bowl?
Yeah, or bowl.
No, the bowl gets cut. The bowl gets cut.
Bowl. Could be a steak bowl, could be a chicken bowl, could be a vegetarian bowl.
I don't know. Poke bowls are okay. Okay, burrito is the start.
Yeah.
Quesadillas are at best okay and at worst okay.
Agreed.
So probably the bench, because you know what you're getting. It's not going to be terrible. It's not going to be good. And then the bowl. If you're in the burrito mode, a burrito bowl is just not a real thing. So that's got to go away. There's other kinds of bowls that I'd be okay with, but not in the burrito family.
And do you have last question before you plug your work and we sign off? Do you have a hot food take you want to share?
Hot food, hot temperature or spicy?
Spicy.
Yeah, breakfast hot sauce is not hot sauce. It's just some sweet thing that could be nice, but I wouldn't call it hot sauce.
Okay. Certainly hot right there. So, Michael Kardos, thank you for your time talking about your books, your journey, and for those that want to be authors, for offering them advice.
Oh yeah, no, I'm really glad to talk to you. It was fun, and I love the background. It's just it's good.
Where can we find all of your work?
Easiest thing is probably my website, which is just my full name, michaelkardos.com. Just because that's where everything is. I'm on social media to some degree. Every time I'm on social media, I like it to some degree, but I'm also aware that that's time I'm not writing or time being with my kids or time doing those kinds of things. So my website is generally pretty current and has everything on it.
All right, so Michael Kardos, and last, anything we should look forward to coming out, or should we enjoy Quick Change and Fun City Heist for a bit longer?
Oh man, for now, please enjoy Quick Change, which just came out in, very recently. Please enjoy Fun City Heist, which just
Hmm.
came out in, a couple months before that. I
Hmm.
know it's coming out in paperback in June, so
Yeah,
in time for Father's Day, which is a good, get it for your dad kind of book.
I might make that purchase for myself, my dad, but still.
Yeah, awesome. No, it was great to talk to you.
All right, well, thank you, Michael Kardos, and folks, we will see you next time on Zach with an H.